Welcome to our live stream webinar here. We're on the campus of Washington University at the Olin Business School. We're here to celebrate the MBA Program of the Year. Olin revamped its MBA and came up with an incredibly novel, innovative, and bold solution. As someone who watches business schools very closely, I can tell you that it's rare when I do not hear about another curriculum review pretty much every month at another business school. This one was incredibly unusual and involved, among other things, a massive global immersion in 3 locations that actually started off the program, among other things. So with me today to talk about the program and how it was changed is the Dean of the Olin Business School, Mark Taylor, and 2 professors who were involved in the global immersion, Samuel Chun, who is a professor of management practice and who went to Barcelona with a group of about 100 students, and Andrew Knight, who's a professor of organizational behavior, who actually followed them all over the place, Washington, Barcelona, and ultimately Shanghai, China. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks.
So what informed the change, and how did you come up with the fact that you were going to send off the entire class on a 35-day learning experience around the world?
Well, I think we wanted to provide something that was bold, that was innovative, that was really going to be a game changer in terms of the developing our MBA. We like to think of ourselves as a global international school, even though we are here at the heart of the United States. We actually do have a global mindset as part of one of our we call it pillars of excellence. Mm-hmm. So really thinking about how we could imbue that right from the start in our MBA students, how right from almost from the first week they travel from here to Washington D.C., briefed on geopolitics, global business, and then actually sending them out doing not only classroom experience but actually experiential projects, consultancy projects in the field in Europe and then in China. Was really a way of, in a sense, kind of orientation by disorientation, a way of really getting the students thinking in that global mindset right from the beginning.
Right. And, to me, one of the more unusual aspects of this is traditionally there is a belief in academia that you have to teach all the core subjects, accounting, finance, marketing, strategy, and then they can apply those ideas, those concepts to the real world when you have some experiential learning. You guys kind of reversed the process and threw people right into it. What was that like?
It was exhilarating. I think, and there's a lot of reason behind that. What you do is you give them a general framework that enables them to actually penetrate their cores more deeply when they get back into the accounting and the marketing and the finance. So it also gives them kind of a common language that they can use from the get-go, and it's a nice setup.
And my sense is you also organized teams of students so that you took their backgrounds. So if you had a person who had a background in accounting or a person who had a background in strategy or project management, and you put them together in a way to basically allow them to bring that expertise to whatever project they're working on. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So on some level, they didn't need to go through semester-long courses on all the core basics to add value to a given project.
So most MBAs come in with some kind of experience,
right?
And I think team composition is something we've always took very seriously through all our programs, but I think it was especially critical for this particular experience.
Mm-hmm. And the curriculum revamp is really based on 4 pillars. Mark, you alluded to it. Global is one of them, obviously, but entrepreneurship and experiential learning, and then values-driven with data analysis is another. How did all 4 of those pillars come to play in the global immersion? Andrew?
So we start out here in St. Louis, and the students began with a course focused on values-based and data-driven decision-making. And so it really establishes that as a cross-cutting way of thinking about projects that they carry with them throughout each additional location. The experiential part was a core component of the program. Students are learning by engaging in project-based experiences, and they're learning about different domains of business through those projects. And so it is a core component as they move across the globe. Global is obviously central, And finally, with entrepreneurial, a few of the project experiences that they had were specifically oriented towards engaging in some of the skills that you need to be successful as an entrepreneur.
Right.
And so whether that's a project working with wineries in Barcelona, or a project thinking about how you would enter into the Shanghai market if you were a donut company, each of those involved really flexing the students' entrepreneurial muscles.
Mark, what do you think you learned through the first iteration of the global immersion?
Well, I think we had a couple of iterations before that. We were mindful of engaging our current MBA students, absolutely top class, and they helped us really think about how we would do this. So we had some pilot studies and sent students to Barcelona and Shanghai, and they gave us some initial feedback, and they were really, they told us about how much they enjoyed that global immersion experience and how the group had bonded even in those short pilots. So it wasn't a completely first run. But having done the whole run together, we found out a few things like making sure that work is compartmentalized. So work that was assigned, say, in Barcelona was finished and didn't hang over when students arrived in Beijing or Shanghai, right? So managing the workload. I think we probably we gave a heavy workload to the students, right? So perhaps a little bit more time for cultural activities, for social activities.
Yeah.
But by and large, we were pretty happy with the first iteration, as it were. Yeah.
And you got two things out of it, right? One sense of it was you received, or you were able to give the students accelerated development by throwing them into this unusual experience. You got a level of maturity and learning more quickly than you otherwise would if you just threw them into a traditional classroom on campus, right? And then the other learning was the deep bonds that were formed among the students, traveling together over 35 days in 3 different locations, riding buses, staying in hotels, having dinner and lunch and breakfast together, working on these assignments together. I hear that they came back to St. Louis, and the second year has wondered, well, what is going on here? Because it was such a close-knit group.
I think that's absolutely true. It's the idea of people traveling together, you say, for several weeks around the world, working with each other 24/7, actually, not going home, actually being, perhaps we give them a little bit too much work, but actually working together, did provide that bonding experience. And as you say, they arrive on campus a semester earlier than usual. So they're actually getting this intensive boot camp as well for several weeks.
Right.
So by the time they get back here in late August, September, they're actually ready for, way ahead of the game in terms of starting the rest of their program, and also interviewing for internships. I think also there's the bonding of the group was important, but also shifts in the dynamics of the group, right? Because everybody in this program is in a foreign country at some point, right? And about 40% of the students were non-domestic, with no particular dominance of any one particular nationality, Europeans, Asians, and so forth. And in different countries, that dynamics led to different kind of elements of leadership. So I think that was also a very interesting element of the cultural intelligence, the cultural awareness, and the bonding of the group.
Right. Another part of the boldness of it, frankly, is you decided you were going to move up and bolt on a semester ahead of the traditional start. So you actually asked professors to come off their vacations or their sabbaticals or their research projects, whatever.
Research projects.
And show up,
don't
of course,
vacation.
and show up early along with the students. And even more than that, and this is what I really found fascinating, is you foot the bill for the experiment. I think there are a lot of people out there who are saying, oh, that's great, I'd love to go on a global immersion trip, but my God, it's going to cost me X amount of money. In fact, Olin paid the cost of the entire immersion.
That's absolutely true. So we didn't actually significantly increase fees from 1 year to the next year where we introduced this global immersion. And that's because we really didn't want to deter people from coming on the program, right?
Sure.
We have a comprehensive scholarship program here as well to help students who have, find difficulty in finding the fees. But at the moment, we don't offer stipends. That is our way of offering a stipend that actually provides a great return on investment worth, $20,000, something like that.
Right. Wow, that's fantastic. Now, Sam, bring me through the Barcelona experience. I mean, you were there. What happens? Bring me through, if not day to day, Give me a real sense of what people experienced on that trip.
Well, it's a blend of I think three things. There's clearly there's course components. I mean, we do have content that we have to get through, and it's general management boot camp in Barcelona, getting people thinking on lines of strategy, execution, and how to actually lead these things. And the content is placed usually, I mean, tactically in the mornings. In the afternoons, we have experiential visits to wineries and distributors to get an understanding of how these businesses operate. We've got coaching and development sessions on alternating days that basically keep students on track with projects, but also helps them develop personal skills, consultative skills, business acumen skills on the fly. And in the evenings, we dine at, 9 p.m.? I mean, these guys eat late in Barcelona.
Yes, indeed.
And
Sam, I heard that you were starting classes at 8 a.m. Is that true?
Yeah, that was an error. We tried, and we quickly overwhelmed the hotel wait staff, who loathed us because we got them to work at 6 instead of 7.
Oh.
So we were like the most hated people on hotel premises until we switched that right midstream.
But it's a nice mix of classroom time, one-on-one coaching, trips, projects and assignments, and then cultural visits to get a sense of the culture of the place, right?
And these are meaningful trips. You know, it's not just going for a winery tour. It's really
Like, for example, give us an example.
Well, how does this family actually think about what it wants to do with wine? I mean, one of the things we assume is that everyone wants volume and growth. And some of these families just say, no, we're doing quality, it's this many cases, and we're not going to do any more than that. And then the students have to kind of understand this and cope with that at a very different level. It is in fact values-based, not yours, but you know, the company owners.
Right. And the assignment for the students essentially was what?
So at that point, it was really understanding what these wineries wanted to do to expand themselves pretty much into the United States. So Catalan has an interesting problem. It's, you know, there's politics there right now.
Sure.
And the actual sales of Catalan wineries are impacted by this. So a lot of these guys are looking for global diversification. And the United States is a great market. Some of them are in it, but I think we undersell cava in this country. We focus more on champagne and the bubblies that we get from California.
Or Prosecco.
Yeah, Prosecco.
Which is quite popular.
You know, and I won't say anything, but
Oh.
Cava has some superior elements to it compared to Prosecco.
Now, Andrew, you accompanied the students in every location. DC, where there are a lot of lectures and classes at the Brookings institution because of a long-standing partnership that Washington University has with Brookings. And then, of course, Shanghai, where you spent 17 days, and I think you also took a trip to Beijing. Tell me a little bit about the Chinese experience.
So the Chinese experience, as you mentioned, the students began by visiting Beijing before they went into Shanghai. And the focus in Shanghai was building upon the foundations, the general management course in Barcelona, with a tilt more specifically to thinking about strategy, first of all, and second of all, operations. And so the strategy course was built around thinking about how someone from the United States might locate an outlet, a new retail outlet in Shanghai. And so the students did a lot of work out in the community, boots on the ground, scouting locations, and thinking critically.
Even locations for the stores to be planted in
correct.
Shanghai.
And even just doing some boots on the ground, almost anthropological observations of convenience stores. What are the differences between how convenience stores and retail outlets operate in Shanghai compared to what the students may be more familiar with in their own home countries? And so there was a big element of thinking critically about how business operations differ across different societies, but also people operations, how people manage not just their employees, but also their customers. And so that was a big initial focus of the course, the first course in Shanghai. And the second one focused on operations. And there the students had wonderful opportunities to visit and see in depth some cutting edge approaches to manufacturing or textiles. And for some of the students who may not have had those experiences before, it was incredibly eye-opening to see how how many of the goods that we have here in the United States or elsewhere are produced and distributed.
Now, Andrew, did you have class at 8 o'clock in the morning?
I'm not sure.
It was such a whirlwind. You
I'm
can't
not
even
sure.
remember.
We had class at different times of the day. I think I often had students at the tail end of the day. But I think what was different about this experience was that it wasn't built around class times per se. And so my response of, well, I'm not really sure, is partially because the educational experience was so different from a traditional class-based model. And instead, the students are learning and working with one another at very different times of day. In some sense, they're living like a global business person would live. And so sometimes after dinner, we might come into a hotel and we'd see a team of students working together in the hotel. And so the rhythm of the day, I think, really was more akin to what a global business person might live, as opposed to more of a class-based model.
Yeah, I mean, you essentially had almost 100 road warriors.
Yes.
Right?
It was experiential in more than one way. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's right.
Really, absolutely. And in addition to what they were doing, some were actually preparing or interviewing for internships,
Yes, they were.
right?
Yes.
By Skype and things like that.
That's right.
And you also brought along a contingent of career management people from the Weston Career Center.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So this is quite a Mad Dogs and Englishmen tour, to use the phrase from the old Joe Cocker days for baby boomers. That won't mean anything to you millennials out there, but hey. And I should point out, Mark, that you've made some changes given the coronavirus in China. Want to explain what you're going to do next time?
Sure. So we have a global program, and global programs get hit by global shocks now and again. So we're
Indeed.
kind of practicing what we teach and really acting nimbly and pivoting and maybe shifting the program. So some of the program will remain the same. So the students will go from here to Washington, D.C. for the international briefing. Then they'll go to Barcelona. But then last year we went from Barcelona to Beijing to Shanghai. And this year we're going from Barcelona to Paris, and then from Paris to Lima, Peru, right?
Wow.
When I said Paris and Lima, people thought I meant Paris, Texas, and Lima, Ohio. No, this is actually Paris, France, and Lima, Peru.
Wow, that's quite a trip. So you're actually adding another major city. I mean, Paris is a special place.
Yeah, and they'll do some business there as well, but there'll also be a cultural visit as well, a European cultural visit. And the bulk of the extra work will be in South America, in Lima.
Now, for the trips, are you partnering with local universities and putting the students up in dorms, or are you have other accommodations? We
have other accommodations, right? And really playing to our strengths. This is around about 100 students, maybe a little bit more, around about that level, and therefore they can bond together, and the logistics work for us. We can actually call up a hotel and say, do you have 100 rooms available, right? Do you have 100 seats on this flight going to Lima, Peru? And that works well for us. Actually,
that's the other remarkable thing about it. You were able to pull this major undertaking off in little more than 12 months after the faculty approved the curriculum changes. Mm-hmm. And that's amazing in and of itself, because you are arranging all kinds of logistics, the coursework, the projects. You always have to anticipate the unexpected. Someone gets sick, someone gets ill, someone has a personal emergency of one kind or another, and it needs to be immediately tended to. I mean, there's a lot to think about when you're going to take 100 students and bring them all around the world.
Yeah. And the faculty, and I should say the staff, have been absolutely outstanding in putting this together, as have the students. And I think we talked about the bonding of the students on this trip, but also there's a bonding between the faculty and the staff and the students and together as well. So it's been actually a really positive experience for the whole school.
That's great. Well, thank you for sharing that experience with us.
Our pleasure.
It was quite an undertaking, and congratulations on pulling it off, and not only this, but the rest of the pieces of the new curriculum. So we are going to be joined in a few moments, stay with us, with 3 students who were kind of guinea pigs on the first big global immersion, and we'll talk about it from sort of the front lines of Washington, Barcelona, and China. This is John Byrne with Poets and Quants on the campus of Washington University's Olin Business School. Thanks for watching.